Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I might just start, if we can just maybe move forward to slide 4. Yeah, thank you. So I thought it might be useful just to give a bit of an overview around ovarian cancer to begin with, which of course is Cleo Diagnostics focus. So you might see there the title there, The Silent Killer. Ovarian cancer is actually one of the deadliest diseases affecting all women, with a really shocking mortality rate of over 51% of women dying within just 5 years of diagnosis. And as you can see along the bottom of the slide there, compared to other cancers such as breast cancer, cervical cancer, and bowel cancer, it really is alarmingly high. And the reason for this is that with other cancers, we've been able to largely reduce those mortality rates through things such as adequate screening tools or reliable diagnostics. And unfortunately, with ovarian cancer, that is not the case. We've got no screening tests and really no reliable diagnostic tool. And as a result, what you are left with is a lot of women that face unnecessary surgery and a lot of uncertainty. And I might just delve a little bit deeper into that surgery. So, currently, surgery is the only way that you can diagnose ovarian cancer. And to speak to that in a little bit more detail, when a woman goes in for that surgery, there is often a lot of uncertainty around what will come out, whether it be, ovaries, fallopian tubes, or anything else. But what there is certainty over is that it's not going back in. And as a result, it's instant menopause, infertility, and also a host of other comorbidities as well. And that's really what Cleo's mission is. That's what Cleo is here to change. And so what we're doing is we're building what nobody else has, and that's the world's first blood test that can accurately identify ovarian cancer before surgery when it really matters. And as mentioned, our technology is underpinned by our biomarker, CXCL10, which is completely unique to Cleo and protected by strong IP. As mentioned, it was Dr. Andrew Stevens who founded our biomarker after over 15 years of research. And I'll pass over to Andrew shortly to tell you a bit more about the science that underpins Cleo's technology. But to touch on CXCL10, it really is changing what's possible in ovarian diagnostics. And that's because it behaves quite differently. It tends to light up in the presence of ovarian cancer and it remains silent in benign disease. And that differentiator essentially gives us the power to tell doctors with a lot of confidence who needs urgent intervention through surgery and who doesn't. And that's the alarming statistic around these surgery numbers. It's up to something like 90% of these women that go into surgery are basically found out to have a benign disease. So in summary, it was entirely unnecessary in the first place. So our technology is really changing that landscape. And through this, we're actually bringing to market 3 tests. So the first one is that pre-surgical tool, and then we'll basically culminate into our ultimate goal of bringing a global screening test to market. So things similar to how a woman has a pap smear for cervical cancer or a mammogram for breast cancer, Cleo is looking to bring the first screening test to market as well. And so with our first pre-surgical test, we're already well underway. We've had a few meetings with the FDA already, which have all been positive. We've secured access to national biobanks and leading biobanks, and now we've also partnered with Norstella to build out our economic case for reimbursement. So if we just go back to slide 3, just back one if we can. So what you're looking at, our market cap sitting around 70 million. And you'll see on the right, we've got a proven patented technology and we've got near-term revenue potential. And I've really always seen Cleo as a late-stage company with an early-stage market cap. And I think that that's probably the opportunity for investors on the call today. It's largely de-risked from a technology standpoint. It's been proven, validated in clinical studies, which Andrew will tell you more about. And now we're actually progressing towards an FDA submission in the US next year. So the next 6 to 12 months for Cleo are really shaping up to be very exciting. We're looking to submit to the FDA around mid-year and then launch into the US shortly after that, being the largest diagnostic market in the world. So I might hand over to Andrew now to tell you a little bit more about the company. And then, yeah, I'll be around for any Q&A as well. But thank you.
Yeah, look, thanks, Dana. If I can get you to go back to slide 4, I might just reiterate a couple of those things Dana was talking about because this is a particularly nasty form of cancer. for women. It has a very high mortality associated. One of the reasons, or one of the major reasons for that, is because there are no symptoms. So women actually don't know they have this disease, and even when it's quite advanced, the symptoms are very vague. Because of that, the majority of diagnoses are not made until it's at what we call a late stage, when the cancer has already grown and spread fairly extensively. And it's very difficult to surgically resect at that point. So recurrence is almost universal for patients. And generally, these tumours after treatment will come back within about 12 months. And so all of those things contribute to the very short survival time for women. Now, the the bizarre thing about this is that we don't have obviously screening for ovarian cancer the same way that we do for breast or cervical cancers or colon, that sort of thing. But we don't even have adequate diagnostic testing for these cancers, which sounds incredible, but it's true. If I can get you to go to the next slide. So currently, what happens is if a woman has gynecological symptoms, a physician has to rule out cancer. And the way that that's done at the moment is to use transvaginal ultrasound, so imaging, so to take a picture of the ovaries and see if there are any strange looking lumps or bumps, and also use a blood marker called CA125. And I don't want you to read everything on the screen there. It's really just a comparator of CA125 and Cleo's testing. But CA125 is notoriously inaccurate. And in fact, for early stage cancers in particular, it has about 50% accuracy. So you can toss a coin and you get the same sort of result. But those two things together are used to assess risk of cancer. So they're not diagnostic, they're just a risk assessment. Based on that assessment, if there's any risk that a cancer might be present, that patient is then referred to a surgeon. Now, I just want you to remember, a diagnosis of ovarian cancer doesn't happen until after surgery. So any suspicious mass has to come out and be examined by a pathologist. Obviously, it doesn't go back in again. Now, that generally is a reasonably extensive surgery. It's obviously invasive. It removes, at the very least, the ovaries, fallopian tubes, and any other affected areas in the abdomen. Now, obviously, there's a risk associated with having surgery, but also, particularly around removal of the ovaries, there are other ongoing risks as well. So, obviously, if it's a premenopausal woman, so a younger woman, she is instantly in menopause. She will never have children. For all women, there is then an elevated lifetime risk of diseases like dementia, osteoporosis, heart disease, stroke, and so on. So this is a really life-changing event for these women. But the key thing here is that up to 90% of those cases were not cancer in the first place. So these women never had cancer, and they didn't need that kind of surgery. And it's all because we don't have an adequate way to test these women before they go for surgery to work out how likely it is that that cancer is actually present. So really what we need is a test that can do that, something to decide who needs that sort of surgery, to decide the kind of surgeon they need to treat them, because at the moment, all of them go to a gynecological oncology surgeon, whereas in a lot of cases, they would certainly benefit from a different surgical expertise, and potentially a test to decide whether they even need that surgery in the first place. And that's the test that Cleo is bringing through to the market. So if we go to the next, perhaps slide 7, the testing that Cleo is developing is based on a marker called CXCL10. And this is something that came out of about 15 years of academic research. It's a protein marker that's produced very early in the life cycle of a cancer. It's not produced in non-malignant disease. And so for that reason, it's a very good marker of cancer. It's also produced very early, so it's a good marker of early stage disease. And it provides a very high sensitivity and high specificity for actually identifying and differentiating malignant growths from other things that happen in the ovary. If I can get you to go to the next slide. So that marker has been developed into a small panel, which is the basis of the Cleo blood testing. And on your screen are the metrics from over 300 women that have been tested using the Cleo test in a retrospective study. What you can see is the bar called RMI. That's the current clinical testing we use. Okay, so that's a combination of ultrasound and CA125. And I guess the most important one to look at is the right-hand side in postmenopausal women, because typically these cancers are most common in postmenopausal women. RMI is getting around 70% of these cases right. If you look at the light blue bar for Cleo, you're looking at 98.5%. So far and away, a substantial and material improvement over any existing testing that's out there at the moment. Now, that testing, in addition to the fact that obviously it's able to pick up early stage disease, that testing forms the basis for three different tests that Cleo is bringing through to the market. Now, if I can get the next slide, please. So there are three areas that we're applying that technology to. The first and nearest term is what we call a recurrence test, a pre-surgical triage test. So that's the test to decide whether a woman is likely to have a cancer before having surgery. Now, we know that with some recent data analyses of healthcare providers in the US, there are just over 2 million of these patients who have testing every year. All right. So there's a fairly substantial market just for that testing alone. That's the first test that Cleo will bring through. The second test that we will bring to market is a recurrence test. So this is for women who have already had a diagnosis of ovarian cancer, and we know that those cancers will return. There's a much smaller number of patients, obviously, but they have repeat testing. And so there's somewhere between 1 to 2 million tests for that recurrence market every year as well. And then the third test that we will bring through, based on the proven ability to actually pick up early stage cancers, is a screening test. And this is where you actually regularly test, just like a pap smear, just like a mammogram, routinely test women each year or each 2 years and pick up those early stage cancers when they're at their most treatable. And in fact, if you can pick them up while they're still confined to the ovary, you have about a 95% success rate. So obviously the market size is very large. You're talking about every woman. And this is where you save lives. So those are the three areas that Cleo is bringing tests through. So where are we on this pathway? If I can have the next slide, please. So we have, I guess, been very simple and strategic and focused in what we've done. The foundation of all of this is good science. So all of Cleo's science has been independently reviewed and peer reviewed by experts internationally. It's published, it's publicly available. So unlike a lot of other people in the space, everything that we do, you can actually access the hard evidence yourself. It's freely available. So there's no smoke and mirrors, nothing to hide in Cleo's portfolio. Now, as Dana mentioned, we're targeting FDA approvals. Well, we're targeting applications for FDA approvals, I should say, around halfway through this year, so in the second quarter of this year. Our 510(k) application we have been working on fairly extensively. We've had a number of meetings with the FDA already, which have been very positive. So that will be submitted, obviously. Supporting that, we're also about to commence our kit manufacturing and our clinical trial. So we've been running a pivotal trial in the US for about 12 months. That trial is almost completed and will complete, and the analysis commence within the next couple of months. So we're a fair way down the pathway there. The supporting activities around this as well. One of the issues, of course, is that you can have the best test in the world, but it's not very useful if no one buys it. We've been working since quite early in the piece to get key opinion leaders on board, and there will be some announcements made fairly soon. These are people who support the adoption of the testing, assist in developing the reimbursement case with us. But importantly, they're also people who will lobby their own clinical networks to act as early adopters. So they themselves will be early adopters. They'll have their buddies adopting the test as well. The other piece of that story is the health economic case. We recently commissioned a health economic analysis, and that analysis will be completed around the end of this year. And that's a study that gets presented to insurers to support the reimbursement case. It basically tells them how much money they're going to save by paying for the Cleo test. So all of those things are well on the way. And the other thing that I'm often asked is about how we're going to sell these tests. So the test or the model is a B2B model. So Cleo will sell these tests to pathology laboratories, and then the pathology laboratory provides the test to the patient. If I can just go to the next slide. This is the go-to market plan, which really just reiterates everything I've said. Again, you don't need to read all of that text. We've defined our initial market. We know that there are 2 million women a year because we've got the data. We've got good science sitting behind us. Once again, published, hard evidence, all supporting the science and the underpinnings of the test. We've got some good industry partners and some key opinion leaders on board, and you'll see some announcements coming through fairly soon about both of those aspects for Cleo. And we've started the engagement process with US insurers, with US pathology labs, and with our early adopters. And in fact, our CEO has just returned from the US at some point last night, I think. He's looking a little bit under the weather, but he's been over there talking to pathology labs about placing instruments and so on. If I can go to the next slide, please. The last thing I'll touch on is our team. So our management and operational team is very strong. And in fact, the reason I say that is because almost all of these people have got direct experience of bringing these kinds of things from research underpinnings into the market. So these are people that have done it before. Our board also is very competent in the area. We have obviously, financial, scientific experts, but also key clinical experts in Tom Jobling, one of the most eminent gynecological oncology surgeons in the country and internationally, in fact. And Lucinda Nolan, who has a fairly long history chairing up an organisation called the Ovarian Cancer Research Foundation. And she was so impressed with the technology and what we're doing that she actually stepped down from that board to assist Cleo in getting this into the market. So a great team of people. If I can just get the second to last slide, please. So just a really quick summary. A good technology, strong IP position behind it and strong science, and a very significant opportunity in market size and I guess in the ability to actually improve patient health and patient outcomes. The test that we have obviously is highly superior to anything that's on the market or even in fact in research stages. So we believe we're in clear water here. And we have a great team with the experience to deliver. So final slide, I believe, is just contact details. So thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you both for that detailed presentation. We do have time for a couple of questions. So a couple of questions have come through during your presentation, so we'll jump on to those. I suppose one, probably an obvious question, but what are the clinical and economic benefits for hospitals and insurers versus CA125?
Yeah, so I can answer that. CA125 has been around for about 40 years now. It is extensively used in this triage space, and it's used off-label, in fact, in almost every case. And there are quite literally millions and millions of these tests done around the world every year. It is inaccurate. That's the bottom line. Everybody knows it's inaccurate. as I say, particularly for an early stage cancer, it's about 50% accuracy, so you can toss a coin. It's pretty good for detecting late stage cancers, but obviously at the point that a cancer has become late stage, it's a little bit pointless because the treatment pathway is not going to change. And CA125, and this is one of the biggest problems with it, it's elevated in a lot of non-malignant conditions, and it can be things as simple as women who exercise, for example, will have higher levels. Different levels in pre and postmenopausal women, different levels associated with, if you have a benign cyst, for example. So it's a notoriously inaccurate marker. It has no diagnostic capacity whatsoever, but it's all we have, and it's clinical practice, and it's mandated in guidelines. So we're fairly confident that simply swapping out CA125 for a Cleo test would be a substantial benefit, particularly around the ability to accurately triage patients. In the US in particular, all of these patients are going to oncology centres, which means that not only are you using up the far more expensive resources of highly trained oncology surgeons, you're also preventing patients who do have cancer from actually getting treatment. And there are some fairly strong pieces of evidence saying that the outcomes of patients or patients having adverse outcomes because they're not getting to treatment fast enough. So that's really what we're aiming to change. And that's for the health insurers, that's what's going to save them a lot of dollars.
Now we are at time, unfortunately, but there are a couple of questions that are sitting in the Q&A section that Dana or Andrew, if you could jump in and answer them directly. And as you can see on the screen, the contact details are there. So if you do have any other questions of Dana and Andrew, please send them through directly. But thank you both for your presentation.
Thank you.